Right. All right. Welcome, everybody. Hello. Good afternoon. Good day, wherever you're at. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing. There we go. So welcome to another Gimmal education session. My name is Marcia Shields, and I'm from our customer success team. Our goal for these sessions are the same. It's really to enhance your expertise with your Gimmal software. We are recording the session, and it will be shared after the event, so please keep an eye out for that. Jeff Tuish is with me today. Jeff is going to be your subject matter expert, and he's going to be talking about all things Gimmal Discover today. Jeff's going to be going through the Discover's workflow builder and how to navigate that to show the power and options that it has. It's one of the great mysteries of Gimmal Discover because I won't steal Jeff's thunder, but it's one of the more complicated but powerful aspects of the product. So this is actually session one of a 2 or maybe 3-part series, still deciding that. But the second part of the series will be on December 10th. So format for today is going to be the same. We're going to be doing about 15 to 20 minutes for Jeff to talk through the product aspect, and then we'll follow that with time for your questions. Please use the Q&A area of your Zoom to post any questions, and we'll be sure to answer those after the event. Before I hand things off to Jeff officially, though, I'm going to do a quick poll for you all. We're always curious for some of your insights, and in particular, because this is about the workflow builder, really the question is, have you ever created a workflow with Gimmal Discover from scratch? And answers are yes, no, or tried but failed. So we're getting some answers in here, Jeff. I'll let you know.
If they're all yeses, we're done.
I wish I could say that. The majority of them are no.
Okay.
So far, 80% are no. So there are some that have done a workflow from scratch, but that's
awesome.
right. I'll leave the poll up for stragglers that come in, but Jeff, really, I can hand things over to you and you can start digging in.
Great. Thanks, Marcia. All right. Whoops. Sorry about that, guys. Hit the wrong button. Gotta love when that happens. And I gotta switch my display settings every time. Very annoying. All right. Let's try that again. All right. So there we are. We're going to talk about the workflow builder. So we're going to actually create 2 workflows from scratch. Actually, this is sort of going to be like a cooking show. I've already made the workflows, but we're going to pull the casserole out of the oven and then we'll figure out how we made it. So we're going to do one, and I have a couple of use cases here that we're going to do, and one for 365 mailboxes and one for Windows file path. And the reason I have 2 different ones is because the data sources are going to dictate the actions and decisions that we can make inside of the workflow editor. So first off, one of the confusing things, workflow builder, workflow editor, same thing. It has 2 different names. They're synonymous. So if you hear one reference, just think of the other if that's what you're used to. All right, so making the workflows today, we're going to do 3 different steps. We're going to use the process each, the decisions, and the actions. Process each basically is the hierarchy we're going to build of a data source, like from a mailbox to a folder to a message. And then decisions are what we want to check from a metadata and or content perspective. And then actions, what do we want to do with that data once we find it? So going next slide. So use case number 1. We're going to create a Office 365 mailbox workflow that's going to analyze only the inbox and the sent items, any message older than 180 days using the receive date. Why are we using the receive date? Because every message sent or received has a receive date. Now, the ones who don't are things like drafts or appointments that you put in your own calendar. Those do not, but we're just going to go with the normal. Since we're doing inbox and sent, we know all those have a receive date. And we're just going to create a report, but I'm going to go through and you'll see the other 2 bars down here at the bottom, other possible decisions and actions. We're going to be focusing on those 2. So don't think we're not going to cover that. We're only going to create a report with this workflow, but I want to show you all the possibilities that you have. So we want to create a report that lists every message that we found. So that could be millions of rows in that particular report. And then also summarize, hey, for each mailbox, how many messages did we find that matched the criteria and what were the total size? So that way, if you want to know per user what they're hoarding in their mailbox, then you have some insight on that. So we're going to do a process each mailbox, process each folder, process each message, and then other possible things. So I just put these on the slides so that you'd see it. But right now we're going to leave it and we're going to go to the workflow editor. So this is the workflow I'm going to talk about first, but I'm going to do this for you first. So when you first come into the workflow editor, if you've never made one, I clicked on File New, and I have to give it a name. This is what you're going to see. This is stifling for a lot of people. It's like, what the heck do I do now? So this is where you build the workflow, and you do that by right-clicking the end, click on Add Step. In this case, I'm going to do a process each. So what's process each doing? These are all the various data sources to which Discover can connect. And I'm going to do an EWS mailbox because EWS mailbox is Office 365. And it's going to say, okay, we want to process every mailbox. What do you want to do? And what do you want to call the tabs that we're going to create coming across the top? Well, I'm going to say, I just want to call it mailbox because I don't want it to scroll left and right. When I click on OK, look what happens. Now I have a yellow box, which is a process each box. And then I have a new tab, which is what I named the mailbox. So now what are we going to do? We're going to go down further the hierarchy. Process each. We're going to do a folder. You probably see this coming. I'm going to click on Add, type in the word folder, hit OK. Now we have a folder tab. Then I can go Add Step again, process each. Now we get down to the message level. Now we actually could go down to the attachment level. That will be something that I will be covering in probably number 2, maybe number 3, because I think there will be 3 of these. So what have we made at this point? We basically saying this is what workflow is doing. Every mailbox that we nominate in a policy, we are going to go through and look at every folder within that mailbox as we do every message in that folder. And that's every subfolder down the hierarchy, not just inbox and sent items and all its peers, but also any user created folders can also be processed by this. And then we get to the message level and we say, what do we want to do with it? So I'm going to go, now that I showed you that, and bring up the one that I already made and give you some insight. So once again, mailbox, folder, and message, you'll see how I did that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the mailbox tab. And remember I said that we only want to do inbox and sent. So I'm going to double click on this and you're going to notice there's a filters. And I said, I only want to do matching items. And you'll notice my 3 choices. I can say, you know what? I don't want to filter at all, which is the default. Or I want to list the ones that I do want to process, or I want to list the ones I don't want to process. I would always recommend catering to the lesser, so it's less stuff to put in here. So in this case, I said I want to be equals to inbox. And you'll see all the choices I have here. A lot of converses. So greater than, equal, I mean, greater than or less than, contain, does not, begins, end, is like, is not like, is empty, is not empty. A lot of choices in here. And you can even use the wildcards if you wanted to. So for instance, if I said is like pattern, and you have users that are creating folders below the mailbox, what I did here, if you can't see that, is I put a slash followed by an asterisk, like the old DOS commands, as a wildcard. So you can do that as well in here. But I chose in this case only to do inbox and sent. Now, if I go to the folder tab, you're going to notice a green box. And what that green box is for is this is for only a certain set of data sources. Office 365 Mailbox and Archive offer it, as does Windows, as does Gmail. And those are the ones that offer this capability. And what it does for you is it expedites processing tremendously, actually exponentially. So what this is doing is it's called a fast search. Microsoft maintains an index, and we're going to leverage that index by creating a fast search. So how did I get there? Well, this is the green box. Green box is done by doing, once again, I right-clicked on the yellow box here because anytime you want to make a step, you want to either, if I want it to be at the end, in front of end here vertically, I would right-click on end. I want this to be in front of the email message. So I'm right-clicking on the yellow box and they do a decision and fast search. So that's how I added this particular fast search. So what are my choices? Well, what I chose was I want to test the age. And you'll see here that I said I want to use the receive date with all the possibilities that are available to me. I have my operator. Do I want after, before, equals? Ours is older than 180 days. You also have the units on that. And then you freeform in the number. If I did a between, then I could put a second number in here. So what is Microsoft doing for this? So let's pretend that I'm a user that has never used a delete key in my life. And in my inbox, there's 100,000 messages. And we're looking only for the ones that are older than 180 days. Well, if I did not use the fast search criteria, what Discover has to do is look at the metadata for every message and say, are you older than 180? Are you older than 180? All the way down through the messages in that folder. What Microsoft is doing is saying, hey, I already know that answer. So let's say there's only 1,000 messages out of the 100,000 that are older than 180 days. Microsoft is going to say, here's the 1,000 messages. So now it just saved us checking 99,000 messages. So once again, it really helps with processing. So I could do the age. I could do any of these you'll see here, including content. So if I have keywords that I want to do, and you'll notice the different options I have here, I can make up search expressions in here, and Microsoft maintains content also in that index. So this is really key, because if we are going after messages with a certain content, now we're talking more processing time per message, because we have to crack the message open, look at the content to see if there's a match. Microsoft already knows. So once again, if we have 1,000 that match out of 100,000, it's going to give us those 1,000, and we save all that time. So keep in mind the fast search can really be leveraged to help you with speed, but for mailboxes and archives in 365 is one of the few data sources. But we get to the message. And now I can say, okay, once again, there's a green box. That's the decision box. And notice that my choices are on the decision, very binary. If it's true, the flow goes down. If it's false, the flow goes to the right. So if this message is not older than 180 days, and first off, you're probably wondering, well, if I have the fast search, why do I have this? You don't need it. I wanted to show you the two options on this. So if I had the fast search live in this workflow, I would not have this green box. However, for data sources that don't have the fast search capability, I wanted to show you how that can be done. So how did I add this? I clicked on Add Step Decision. I right-clicked on that is, and I chose, let's go out and look at the age. Notice all the different things you have, and these are going to vary by data source. These are all the decision points that you have to interrogate data to determine, is this a message I want to process or I want to exclude, because you can go either way. Not everything has to be true to be processed. Maybe the false ones are the ones that are going to be processed. So these boxes can be built horizontally and vertically, and there's no limit to that. I mean, keep it within something normal so you can actually figure out what you're doing, but there is technically no limit on stacking these vertically or going horizontally. So you can check all these different things in here. If we were checking textual, then I'm going to have operators that allows me, just like we saw earlier, the same kind of operators in here. If I'm going after a date, I'm going to do another add step decision, or we'll do an age. Then we have the ability to put in the units and the numbers. If I'm doing something like size, then I'm going to have the ability to have different operators for this. So it all depends on what type of data that I'm trying to interrogate. So in this choice, basically what's happening is, as I go through every folder, is a message older than 180? Nope. Then false, it goes to the right. And basically what this means is there's nothing else. It ran into the end. Next message, please. This one doesn't qualify. If it's true, I don't have to be done. I can say, you know what? I have another step. So I'm going to go out and now I'm going to check the content. And I'm going to explain to you why we're doing that first. So I'm going to say I want to do all content. Notice you can break it down by which ones you want. And then I'm going to put in my search expression, something pretty darn simple just to have it in there. So now what I've done is I've had two doors to go through before I qualify a message. It has to be older than 180 days, and it has to have the message content. Then I go out and create my reports. So that's what you have the choices of. You can stack these vertically. Basically, anything vertical, here's an and condition if you've ever done any programming. If you go to the right and say, well, that's not true, but I want to add a different check, then you're sort of doing an or condition. So you can do these as complex or as simple as you like. Once I find something, I right-clicked on the blue box again. I'm going to add an action. And you're going to see the choices that I have. I could delete the message, copy it to another folder in the same mailbox, another mailbox, to the archive, to a PST. I've got a lot of choices here on what kind of action I want to take. Or I simply produce a report, which is what the set values are doing. So we always recommend analyzing prior to deleting or doing any kind of remediation, just because it's nice to get a report to validate that your criteria is working correctly. So that's how I made a workflow to go out and look at the messages older than 180 days and create reports. So how did I create the reports? Well, I went out and said, for the overall report, I just want to have the mailbox name, the number of messages, and the total size. And look at the number of messages. You probably say, that's not numeric. How does that work? We're going to cover that in a sec, so I'm going to table that. But the total size, I even chose to format it. And we're going to get into that in the next session on how you can use subtokens to help format your data. But for the other set values, I'm just listing the metadata that I want to see in the report. And one of those, notice what I did, it got a little fancy here. So if you're trying to check my report and saying, hey, I don't want to get my calculator out and figure out how long ago April 6th was that 180 days? I'm doing the math. Instead, I actually said, okay, produce a column that shows me the number of days old the message is by that date. So that's a kind of fancy thing you can do as well with the formatting. So I go over to the root sequence. We're going to close this one out here. And you're going to see I want to do a save list and group values. So I want to produce a report that says, use the mailbox. So if we have 1,000 rows in the report for every message in one particular mailbox, it's going to make a categorized report of one line only for the report. It's going to count how many lines are for that particular mailbox. So it doesn't care what the value was in this column. It just wants to know how many rows for that mailbox. And then it's going to sum the total size. And in the report, I would have John Smith, 6,212 messages, 312 gigabytes. So that's what you'd see out of that. So I took a long time here for this one. I'm going to jump over to the other one and say no to that because I definitely don't want to do that. And the only difference between these two is you'll notice that there is no fast search here for Windows. It is capability. It does require an index to be created in Discover, which is another session we're going to have coming down the line. But I'm going to be talking about the index and how to leverage it in the next workflow session as well. But you'll notice what I did on this one is instead of going to a path, so I'm processing a data target in Windows, I'm going to go to the path, to the folder, and then to the file, not to the message. And then once again, I have decisions. Everything from this point down are decisions I can make about the data within the Windows file path. So different data to interrogate, including being able to check the content. And then from an action perspective, there's less actions I can do for Windows. Here are the typical 4 you can have. There's also some other ones depending on what's been authorized for your instance of Discover. But those are the actions that you can take for this. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands, how do I go from this to a valid workflow? Now, some real quick, I'm going to show you a little cheat thing you can do. So let's say that you went out and you made a beautiful workflow and you said, I need another one just like it, but I don't want to create it from scratch. Don't. So what you can do is you can go out, save to web. And when you do that, it's going to come back and say, do you want to update the one you have, or do you want to make a brand new one? Now you can give it a new name, and you've used this one as a template to be able to make any additional ones. So that's what I wanted to cover for today. I hope that helps a little bit. Please do tune in for workflow session number 2. We're going to get into the actions more. You're going to notice that there are other steps that we can take, such as go to and loop. I use go to a lot, and process each item list. We'll get into that as well. So we'll be talking about those, as well as, if you recall, going back over to the message on the set values, I did a little thing here with the date, and I did a little thing here with the size for subtokens. So we're going to be talking about how to do those as well. So I hope that helps you a little bit, and I hope to see you on the next session. So let's go back to the slides.
Yeah, that's
and start
great.
from
Great walk
there.
there. That's a
Yeah,
very good.
sorry, I skipped this one over. We saw it already. So now here to questions and answers. Sorry, Marcia, it's all yours.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was gonna say it was an excellent walkthrough, especially pointing out how you can copy as a template at the end there, so you don't have to recreate the wheel completely, and you
Yep.
can just edit the new one, with whatever new data that you're trying to pinpoint that. So that's great.
Yeah, my
Uh,
recommendation on that, Marcia, is if you think that you're doing something that should be automated, then ask support, email support and say,
yeah,
hey, is there an easier way to do this? There probably is.
yeah, shortcuts are great. I'm all
Yes,
for them
me
myself.
too.
I
Work smart,
I
not hard.
agree. So we do have a few questions for you, Jeff.
Okay.
So let me go through this. One of them is, can I copy a sequence or step from one workflow to another?
Oh, yes, you can. In fact, how about I end the slideshow and we'll go show you. So let's say that, cancel out of this. Let's say I had two workflows here. One of the things that I do a lot is I go out and do this. I'll minimize it and get it into a window. And I'm not going to do this whole thing. Open up another workflow. And then what you can do is say that you had to check for a credit card in here, which I don't, we'll be talking about that next time too. But you had a particular sequence that you added in here. You can actually copy a sequence from one and paste it into the other workflow. So that definitely can be done. Again, that saves you time. And then you can make the adjustments how it's different. But if you have something that has a lot of different decisions and actions in it, and you want to reuse it, right click on start and go to copy sequence.
So just my follow up on that. So is that different from copying from the template you
It
showed? Like,
is
okay,
because, yeah, these are sequences. Any one of these tabs is a sequence.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
back to
Okay,
the show. Let me go
great.
back and keep bouncing. Sorry for
And that's
bouncing back and
fine.
forth, folks.
Yeah, maybe it's helpful to stay there. So here's another question for you. If I have multiple vertical decision steps, does it matter what order they are in?
It does. And especially when you get to content, always have your content check be last because it's easier to qualify and faster to qualify the data based upon the metadata. And then if you're going to do a content check, check that last. If that's your only check, of course, then obviously it's going to be first, but always put your content check last because that's the most expensive in time. And there's no point in doing it if it doesn't go through the other criteria.
Okay. Okay. Another question. Can I add multiple data sources to a single workflow?
You can, and we're going to be talking about that in the next one. And yes, you can. So first off, can you? Absolutely. Would I? No. So what happens? So let's say that we had a workflow that was processing all mailboxes, and we also wanted to process the archives. What Discover is going to do is it's not going to start working on the archives until all mailboxes are processed. So if you got 1,000 mailboxes, we have to do all 1,000 of those, and then we start working on the archives. If you had two workflows, we could actually have one doing mailboxes, one doing archives, run both policies at the same time. Now we're actually doing parallel processing instead of serial.
Mm, all right, good explanation there. And last question, unless anybody else has any, please throw them in the Q&A. This one is, do you recommend using filters for process each?
Yeah, I do. As I showed you with the inbox and sent, if you can do that, you definitely can, and I would suggest will. Now, if you don't want to use the filters in the process each, you actually could use the decisions, and there's one called tokens, and we're going to get into that in the next session as well. Basically, what tokens do is you have a chance to check all metadata for values. So even though we don't have it as a direct decision box that you can directly select, you can still check values even if they're not represented by decision box. So the tokens allow you to do that. It's just easier to do in the filters, honestly.
That's it. That's all the questions, Jeff. So if you could go to the next slide,
I can
we'll
do
wrap
that.
things up. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you for joining. We hope you found this useful. As Jeff said, part 2. Come back for part 2, December 10th. We'll continue this conversation. As Jeff said, there are some things that he's already connected to today that will be talked about in the next one. As a reminder, these education sessions are offered twice a month over our main 3 products, Gimmal Physical Records and Discover. You can register for these events on gimmal.com on our events page. I will send a reminder the week before each event if you haven't registered, and if you'd still like to, there will be an email directed out to you as well. If you also have suggestions for 2025, since we are wrapping up this year, for any education sessions that you would like us to deliver to you, please let me know. You can email me at marcia.shields@gimmal.com. We're always open to suggestions, and we just want to give you what you want. So please feel free to send those in. That's it from us today from Gimmal. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a great day, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks all. Take care.